Hello everyone, my name is Anila. In this video, you will learn about file handling operations in Python. You will learn how to open, write, read or close a file, how to remove a file, and append and create modes. This session includes a theoretical part to get used to the terminology and basic concepts of file handling, and also some practical examples in the end to put our learnings into practice. So, what are text files? There is a ton of data found on the internet which is stored in text files. Files are main locations on disk to permanently store related information. When you want to read from or write to a file, you need to open it first. When you are done, it needs to be closed so that the resources that are tied with the file are freed. Hence, in Python, a file operator takes place in the following order. So the first step is to open the file. The second step is to process data inside this file. And the third and the last step is to close the file. To open a file, Python uses a built-in function open. The open function takes two parameters, the file name and the mode. This function returns a file object called a handle, which is used to read and modify the file accordingly. Note that if the file does not exist, you will get an error. There are different modes which you can specify when opening a file. The first one is the read mode. So you open a file for reading, and the program will return an error if the file does not exist. The second one is append mode. You open a file for appending, but the program creates the file if it does not exist. The write mode. You open a file for writing, the program creates the file if it does not exist. The create mode. You create the file, your program returns an error if the file exists. The last ones are text and binary mode. To open a file for reading, you have to specify the name or the path of the file. We mentioned before that the open method takes two parameters, the file name and the mode. If you do not specify the mode in parentheses, the program will open your file in read mode by default. Create mode will create a file. It returns an error if the file exists. When you are done with the file, you use the built-in function close to properly close it, just like in the code shown below. So for example, you open a file named file.txt in the read mode, you do some operation, and then you have to close the file. Normally, Python has a garbage collector to clean up unreferenced objects, but you should never rely on this. The best practice is to always close the file when you are done. However, this method is not safe. You have to consider the case when an exception occurs when you are performing some operations on the file. In this case, a good solution is to use the try finally block in Python. The finally block always executes after the termination of try block. This way, you guarantee that the file is properly closed even if an exception is raised. Another way to close a file is by using the with statement, which ensures the file closure when the block inside the with is exited. There is no need to explicitly call the close method in this case. To write a file in Python, you need to open it in write mode. In this code shown as an example, we are using the with statement which we mentioned before. Notice that the two blocks of code below perform the same operation. They are just syntactically different. If the file does not exist, this program will create a new file in the directory named file.txt. If it does exist, then it is overwritten. So you have to be careful when working with the write mode, as it overwrites the file that already exists. All previous data are erased from this file. Append mode will append to the end of the file. So suppose that you have a file named file.txt and you open it in append mode, and then you write some data in this file. Then you close it, and when you open and read the file after appending, it will print the previous data and the one that we already appended in the file. Assume you have a file named test.txt in the same folder as Python, where it is written, "We will use this text file to test file handling methods in Python." To read this, you have to open it in read mode. If the file is in a different location, you have to specify the path like you did before. In Python, there are many methods for reading a file. So suppose we're operating on the previous txt file. There are some variations of read mode. For example, in this code, you can either read the first 2 data of this file or the other 5 data of this file. So you can read a specified number of data in the given file, or if you do not specify the number inside the parentheses, then the program will read the rest of the data till the end. You can read a file line by line by using a for loop. This method is both efficient and fast. To delete a file, you have to import the OS module and run os.remove function. But first, you have to check if the file exists to avoid any error. I will explain this syntax in details in the following examples. So the first example that we'll work on is a general example to practice file handling operations. So suppose that I want to create a file. For this, I have to open. I use the open method and then I specify the name of the file, for example, file1.txt, and then I have to open it in create mode. If I run this, you can see that we have created a new file here. After this, I want to write data inside this file. For this, I want to use the try block. So I open the file that I just created. I specify the mode. And after this, suppose I write some data here. Let's say this video is about file handling operations in Python. I add a new line here. And after this, I want another line. Let's say, let me write here in this example, we are using the write mode. After this, I close the try block and I'll write finally, and then I'll close the file. Now if I run this and go here at file1.txt, you can see that this data is written inside the file. Suppose now we want to read the data, like print the data written inside this file. I'll just comment this part of the program. Let me use again the try and finally block. We'll write app.open, file1.txt. Now we're using the read mode. After this, suppose I want to use a for loop in this case. I have to write for line in F, and after that, print line till the end of the file. And then in the finally block, I want to close this file. I have some indentation error here. I think it's fine. If I run this, then it will print the data inside this file, line by line. The next operation is to actually remove or delete this file. In that case, I have to import the OS module. And I have to check if there exists a path for this file. So if this file exists, in this case, I have to write if os.path.exists, and then we write the name of the file, os.remove file.txt. Else, we have to print an error message if the file is not found. Let's say the file that you want to delete does not exist. See carefully here in the file section. If I run this, there's an error, I think. The name of the file is file1. Okay, we run this. File1 is not here anymore, so it is deleted. If I run it again, it will print me the error message. This was the first exercise. The second one is an exercise to find the longest word in a file. So normally for this, I will use file2.txt where I have already written some data. And for this data, I will find the longest word. So let's start. First, let me name it longest word. And it takes as a parameter the file name, file2. Inside this function, I want to open this file in the read mode, so to check for the length of each word, and then return the word with the longest, which is the longest. For this, I will use the with statement. So with open, and then I specify the file name, and then I open it in read mode as in file. Now I have a variable words in which I want to store the data inside this file splitted. So I want to split the words. I say in file dot read function to read this file, and then I split the words inside this file. So you're already familiar with the split function. After that, I want to store the maximum length like this. And I use the built-in function length to find the length of the object. And then I use the built-in function maximum to find the maximum, the word with the maximum length. And in this case, I write words where I've stored the all these words inside the file. And then I have to specify the key, which will be len for the length. After this function will return the longest word. In this case, I write, it will return me the word for. We check in a for loop each word inside words. if the file length, so I'll use again the built-in function len here in Word, is equal to the maximum length. After that, let me just print this longest word, and here I'll write file2.txt. Let me run this. It will return two words, general purpose and object oriented, which most probably have the same length. Yeah, so this was about this exercise for finding the longest word in a file. Now the third exercise is about counting the frequency of words in a file. So we'll use again file2.txt and we'll count the frequency of each word inside this file. For this, I'll use the collections module, and from this collections module, I will import a counter. Now, a counter is like a container that stores elements as dictionary keys, and their counts as well stored as dictionary values. For example, if I have a list and I have some numbers here, but some of them are repeated several times, and if I want to print like counter list, an exercise, okay, if I run this, it will print the number of occurrences for each number inside this list. So this is how the counter container works. So for our case, let me specify a function, let's say word count, or just count. And as a parameter, I'll take the name of the file. So inside this function, I will use the with statement to open this file, file2, as f, for example. And here I want to return the counter, okay. So read this file, and for each one, now again we have to split the words. We use the split built-in function. After that, I'll just simply print, let me say, number of occurrences for each word, for example. And we have here word, the name of the function was count. And let me pass here as an argument the file name. If we run this, as a result, we'll get each word inside this file and the number of occurrences for each of these words. So this is all about file handling in Python. Feel free to check the practical examples in REPL. I will attach the link in the slides. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.